Welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast, now part of the Work Defined Podcast Network. Join us as we explore the vital role of compensation, strategy, data, and people analytics in navigating today's complex business world. With the resources of Work Defined, we're bringing you deeper insights and actionable ideas from top HR experts. Now, here are your hosts, David Turetsky and Dwight Brown. Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I'm your host, David Turetsky, and I'm very excited today because we have with us a brilliant man who is the CEO and co-founder of Humanly, an AI-powered hiring platform, Prem Kumar. Prem, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, David, and for the kind words.
Well, we're going to find out if those kind words are going to back up based on what we have in this podcast, aren't we?
Exactly. Now I need to be a brilliant man for at least the next.
Well, next to me, you will sound certainly brilliant because I'm a moron. So, and I feel like poop. So, but Prem, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, who's Humanly, and what do you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background has primarily been in product management, data, people. When I was at Microsoft, I was there for about 10 years, and 5 of those years, I was a part of our HR solution delivery team. So I'd be a buyer for ATS software, engagement software, but also we would build a lot of it in-house. When we acquired LinkedIn, one of my roles was bringing that data set into other scenarios like dynamics for talent. So really people, data, product. I entered the startup world at Tiny Pulse, where we were focused on employee engagement, and then eventually started Humanly about 4.5 years ago. And at Humanly, what we're trying to do is help our customers by reducing time to hire via automating and using AI for screening conversations, video interviews, as well as helping you build a pipe on the front end of interviewed candidates versus just profiles that have matching keywords to job descriptions. So can we get you a world of candidates that have been interviewed by our AI and place them?
Which is brilliant because then instead of just believing the keywords, you actually have tested for them in those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're targeting generally these roles where there's high inbound volume. So you're spending a lot of money in employer brand to attract candidates in, but you're just talking to 5% of them generally. You don't have time to get to the rest of them. So can we allow you to talk to the 100% and then use human time on the ones that are the best fit?
I think for a lot of us who have been dispositioned because of our keywords, we would rather have had that at least that shot, that conversation to be able to say, hey, they at least tested me and, I know my stuff. So even if I didn't get asked to the dance, at least I had a shot.
Yeah, no, we take a lot of pride on the candidate experience side, and being heard and sharing your full self is really important. I talked to someone recently, I shouldn't laugh, but they were laughing when they said it. It wasn't funny at the time, but they got a ATS rejection email 5 years after they applied to the job.
Oh my God.
But yeah, choosing who you want to work at your company based on how many words are in common in a LinkedIn profile or resume as compared to a job description is not the right way to decide how you spend your human time on interviewing.
I don't know what's worse, the 5 years or the 5 seconds it usually takes after I hit apply.
Yeah. We could talk about that too.
Yes, we certainly could. And the only other thing I wanted to talk to you about in what you were describing in your background is how cool must it have been when you were at Microsoft and LinkedIn gets purchased and you were looking at it and going, oh my gosh, look at all this amazing data that I have at my fingertips. How cool was that?
It was very cool. I had been a LinkedIn user since pretty much when they started, and they have accrued a lot of data. I remember going to my manager and naively asking, okay, can I grab some time with the product team next week? And he's like, wait about a year for everything to get situated. So it does take a little bit of time to consolidate. But yeah, I think really any AI company is a data company. And It's kind of a battle to not build the best features. You need those anyways. That's table stakes. But are you accruing? Do you have a mechanism to accrue data in a safe, ethical way that your customers get value out of? And can you scale that to then build the best models?
And I think, for a lot of people who are on LinkedIn, they kind of believe in the LinkedIn value chain and the value that they're getting from the relationships and the conversations and maybe the careers that are at their fingertips, maybe. But I wish LinkedIn would do a little bit more about helping people with career frameworks and showing them if they just added these skills, what could they do? Where could they go? I mean, everything you have is in LinkedIn anyways. But that's a podcast for another day.
I was going to go on about that, but thank you, David. You're right.
I got to move us on because, while as I said, you're brilliant and you're fascinating, we got to get on to the podcast. What we need to know, though, Prem, what's one fun thing that no one knows about you?
That nobody, am I including my wife and kids and brother?
Well, I mean, the things that you tell your family, you may not want to expose to the audience, but anything fun or exciting or unusual?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of unusual things about me. One thing I do take probably an abnormal amount of pride about, but I gained a lot from my Boy Scouting experience. I was an Eagle Scout, and I guess the fun fact is I hate camping, but I somehow made it through to Eagle Scouts. So.
Which is kind of if people don't know, it's kind of the tenet of Boy Scouts and Eagle Scouts is being able to survive in the wilderness with just yourself and a few things, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So you literally put yourself through what's called the gauntlet in order to be able to arrive out the other side just to get the eagle.
Yeah. So and then there's a lot of other things, of course, that I got out of it for sure. But yeah, the Scout motto is be prepared, and I was definitely prepared when I was an effective camper. I just wasn't enjoying the process. I did love a lot of the other stuff I learned though.
Well, I'll invite you to glamping, which is a higher version of it, where a lot of those things are taken care of for you.
My wife
beat cool glamping sites around here.
Yeah, my wife beat you to it. So I have been introduced to glamping, and it is my preferred way of to doing it.
There you go. I knew I liked you. Because I've done the other side. I've done the tenting. And I got to be honest with you, my back still hates me for that. What we're going to talk about today is a fascinating conversation that, a listener to the podcast might say, well, we've had this conversation before, but we haven't had this conversation with you. And that's how AI is reshaping recruiting by improving speed, candidate experience, and scalability without losing that human touch.
Hey, it's Libby DeLucian. If you're sick of business advice that sounds cute, but doesn't actually move the needle forward, this one's for you. The Libby DeLucian podcast is where we go one layer deep. No gurus, no glitter, just straight up unfiltered talk about scaling a business, running a household, and holding on to your sanity in the middle of the chaos. If you're the bottleneck in your business or in your own life, I'll show you how to fix it. Simple, tactical, and one layer deep every time. Let's go visit libbyd.com and check out our podcast today.
So, Prem, our first question is, hiring teams today are under a ton of pressure to move faster, do more with less, and still create a great candidate experience. How is AI helping recruiters manage the balancing act, especially in the early stages of that funnel?
Yeah, good question. So I'll answer it very specifically, but I'll start by saying I think AI, like any technology, has the ability to make things happen faster, more efficiently, and at a higher quality. But it also has the ability to make bad things happen faster, more efficiently bad, and at a higher quality of bad. So it does, you do have to have, this isn't a way of getting around having sound process, having the right people in place. So there isn't like a magic secret there, but if used correctly, absolutely. So if we talk about the top of funnel, there's a lot of things happening as it relates to sourcing. I think the initial use cases to me where generative AI has been most used is either in writing or reading. So generating content like an email, a job description, humans should probably check it before it goes out. And then in reading large amounts of data to give you an actionable next step. Yeah, so I think the initial use cases, generative AI in recruiting, I've certainly seen a lot as it relates to the writing and the reading. And when I say reading, it's taking large amounts of data and giving you some actionable insights. As we get, I mean, we're still pretty nascent in terms of like this being adopted at scale at an enterprise. So you're starting to see little features in ATSs or CRMs that will add AI to write an email, to follow up. But to me, it's like the bigger thing is not just helping us do as recruiters, as TA professionals, what we're already doing faster and better, but are there new things that weren't possible before? So going back to our inbound example, when you're getting a lot of candidates coming in, if I'm trying to choose the best person to hire out of 100 people, I probably don't just talk to 5 and decide from those 5 who the best of the 100 is.
Right.
So I think scaling our reach, our engagement, being able to interview every one of the 100, those sort of things start to become more possible as you look at conversational AI and some of the generative AI concepts.
Well, Prem, I want to go back to one of the problems that you were mentioning before, which is AI at scale, especially for, I guess you could think of it as a panacea, that artificial intelligence being part of everything HR, but most especially recruiting, will help recruiters focus on creating the best recs and be able to manage the process and allow for the AI to kind of filter and be the one who judges who gets in. And I know we talked about, you still need to have people in the process. Is it the people who are, I guess where I'm going with this is, what part of the process do they become part of?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question because I feel like right now there's a lot of thought leadership and vendors talking about what is being replaced, but they're not really painting the picture of what does this new world look like. And I definitely feel that, the CHRO, and we're starting to see some of this already, but the CHRO of the future will be managing a workforce that is part human intelligence, part artificial intelligence. A lot of questions arise, such as, is this AI a culture ad? If I'm hiring an EA, I can probably have AI do my schedule, my travel, my email, but I wouldn't have someone sitting at the front when we have guests coming over. So I think those type of questions will arise. But what the role is, so we definitely believe, and we're trying to, in our product, provide this, but it's a little bit more of a job of orchestration as a recruiter. So depending on what outcomes you're looking for a particular candidate journey for, let's say, a support role, maybe candidate experience is just as important to you as efficiency and time to hire. You might go about it a slightly different way where maybe AI is automating like these steps, but then there's a human at the end. So I think it kind of determining what the outcomes and goals are, and then orchestrating where you're using AI specifically in the process per role, per rec, per job family. To me, that is a part of the job then of the actual recruiter, and making sure things are happening in the way you want it to, and not so much just that the generated content is correct, which is one step, but that you're using this workforce and allocating it in the right way to get to those outcomes. So that's kind of part of the role of the recruiter in my eyes as we go forward here.
So if I could sum it up, it's complex and it's going to probably evolve still, right, Prem? It's going to become where there are bits. I guess I'll use a phrase that my co-host Dwight uses often, which is AI is not going to replace people. A person who understands and utilizes AI is going to replace someone who doesn't. And it's coming, and there are different pieces of each process that we need to be very careful about. and figure out how it affects our culture and whether or not the roles that we're talking about, they need that level of touch. Like you were saying, that a lot of these roles that you deal with, they're high volume roles, they're evergreen recs, they're things that you're always hiring for them, whether it's the Home Depot, expert, or whether it's the greeter at Walmart or whomever. You always have to keep the candidate flow going. And so having a backlog of 100 people is a good thing for those organizations. But for other organizations where they're hiring one CTO, they're probably not going to do that.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. It does vary. I think the other piece too is it is, well, one is what you said, like in scenarios where you want to be engaged with large groups of people. It's not about filling a single role, but can you have an engaged pipeline? But I do think too there are like considerations it's not, I guess, me as a vendor saying what the future might be like is my thoughts, but really I think each of us as recruiters, as TA professionals, if we ask ourselves not just what can AI do to make my life easier today, what are the things that are not even possible for me to do now that I now might be able to do, such as keep a pipeline of 1 million candidates engaged with qualified, interested, availability information updated instead of just a bunch of profiles. Yeah, with the
stickies on your monitor.
Yes, that's one way.
Enjoying the conversation? Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode packed with insights and strategies. Now, let's dive back in. Well, so let's get to question number 2, because this one is also very interesting to me, which is one of the challenges with automation is it actually can feel very robotic or impersonal. How do you approach building an artificial intelligence that actually sounds and feels like your culture and brand and earns trust with your candidates?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And one thing I'll say is in the world we're living in now, particularly in these higher volume scenarios, and that includes deskless workers, but also entry-level professional roles, maybe 0 to 7 years of experience. It's not really a choice between talking to AI and talking to a human. It's a choice between being ignored and starting the process because you have a 95% chance if you apply like through a website or in an inbound standpoint to be ignored. And if you're a good candidate, you might have to wait a week, wait 5 days, wait 6 days to get your questions answered. So it's not just about the company. Yeah, if ever. So it's not just the company screening you, but it's you screening the company. And that's part of the reason we have ghosting and drop off. It's just moving too slow. So I guess I'll start with that in mind. But I do think earning trust is, to me, about setting expectations clearly and providing value back. So if 4,000 people apply and you can get them all into a two-way conversation within 5 minutes, that's better. And I'll give you a quick example. When I was at Microsoft, when I started at Microsoft, I was working in the Microsoft Operations Center. And this is I was an operations manager. We were doing support for Hotmail. Not sure if that still exists anymore, but no, I think
is.
I think my wife still has a Hotmail address, but MSN, but the happiest, so customers would submit support tickets. The happiest customers were not the ones that had their issue resolved. They were the ones that got contacted quickly. So if we got to them right away and didn't resolve their issue, they're happier than someone that we took 30 minutes to get to and resolve their issue. So I think the faster we can get these folks into two-way conversations and screen them, that's one way of earning trust, by providing value back to candidates.
By the way, at some point, you and I have to have a bloopers reel where we talk about some of those conversations with the Hotmail users.
Yes, we will. But
no names will be exchanged. We will not talk about that.
But since I was slightly disparaging, I will say, since I left Microsoft, I don't know if it was because I left, but the stock price has gone up quite a bit since I left. So
no, that has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. I think it was their choice to actually start really embracing the Apple brands and start making all the Apple products better, or even on par with their other counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my opinion. Again, we'll talk about more about this another time. But I think I follow you, but I also wholeheartedly agree with you. To me, customer engagement isn't about solving problems. It's about listening and about hearing and making sure that people understand, that you understand them. So even if you can't solve their problem right away, or you can't solve their problem at all, you didn't turn it on. Well, how'd I do that? Well, you got to go press the button. Where's the button? I don't know, sir. I'm not in your apartment. I can't help you. Well, go find the power button and you should be. Okay. Does that have to be plugged in? Sorry, I'm going down the rabbit hole. But all I'm saying is that once you understand and you're empathetic with them, and that's your culture, you can't have a candidate experience that doesn't have that as part of its basis. Because otherwise, what you're doing is you're basically killing your brand.
Yeah, and I do believe empathy can be trained as a model within AI and things like that.
Really?
Yeah. I'm happy to talk about that. So we
I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, we partner with a company called Empathic. Dr. Grin Lord does some of the psychological research behind it, but we're looking at interviews done by AI, interviews done by humans, and how you, one, produce empathy, and two, is empathy correlated to actually converting job candidates? Or and the short answer is there's a lot of small things you can do to create empathetic moments in an interview that AI can do. Humans can do it too, but it's as simple as leaving time for questions at the end, showing up on time, not interrupting when there's a gap in conversation. So there's like a synchrony measure on this. So I think active listening. So those sort of things. And I think another thing with like one of our latest product offerings is a virtual agent that interviews. It interviews many roles better than I do, and as an interviewer. And part of that is being authentic. Like when we were first going out with this, you'd have people saying, "Oh, our tool, it's so good, people think it's human." So the end goal is not one of how many people you can trick.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's like, we want you to know this is AI, but it's here to help you. And we do find that by presenting a human persona and having a more of a natural conversation, candidates are sharing more, and that's really the goal.
I got you. I would think, though, that empathy needs to be weighed with realism and because there are so many candidates out there. There are so many good candidates out there that you can't get their hopes up. And I know you weren't saying that, right?
Yeah.
But the balance of empathy really kind of plays into how do you make sure that the candidate understands that this is a first step, and that if you did well on this, you'll go to the next step. And if not, I'm sorry, but we're going to disposition you, quote unquote. And you'll get that rejection letter anyways.
Yep. Yeah, and you actually mentioned kind of one of the hardest things that we're solving for with these video agent interviewers is what you just said around hopes up. But you don't want to be too harsh with AI either, to give the impression that the AI is the one that might be the hiring manager that said, okay, if this is the right answer, we don't want people to do it. But if it looks like it's coming from the AI, that creates circumstances. So it needs to be polite, but at the same time, you don't want it to be so polite it's getting your hopes up.
Right. Do you actually, I was going to go to a product question, but I decided I don't want to get too product-y. But as part of the conversation, you're not trying, are you doing an assessment, or are you doing more of just a conversation to understand the person, to understand their background, understand their skills? You're not testing in the conversation, are you?
It's a good question. There's kind of like two things we want to accomplish. One is having the conversation, answering questions for the candidate, and screening them to create a situation where a recruiter on the other side doesn't have to listen to every or read every transcript. A lot of tools might give like, here's the question, here's the answer, to make it easier to read. But yeah, we are incorporating scoring, so we're not actually telling a candidate, hey, you're not a good fit, you don't get the job, but we are dispositioning you inside of SuccessFactors, Workday, Lever, whatever the ATS is, as someone who passed this interview or didn't pass the interview. And I can talk to you about how that works, but yes, there is an element of scoring and ranking, and that does touch on not technically an automated decision-making tool, but there certainly is lots of things to consider legally as well.
So let's go to the third question, because I really am interested in this. Can you share an example of how companies have used AI to make their hiring process more efficient, whether it was reducing time to fill, improving response rates, or streamlining workflows? Now, by the way, not the BS KPIs, the real KPIs. Like, how are they really impacting the recruiter workflows?
Yeah, so I would say, and I'd start by saying if AI is not integrated into a workflow, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really exist. Like especially in our space, like you have to be integrated into applicant tracking system or whatever the case might be. So how I see it started with individuals using it for making their days easier. So like generating emails or job descriptions, and I didn't mean to diminish that piece of it in the earlier part. That is a big time savings. So so that and even like writing a job description, not just like the act of writing it, but writing it in the right way. ZipRecruiter has done a lot of studies, for example, on how conversion can increase with well-written job descriptions that are not biased. So that's initially what we saw, a lot of generative or just like asking questions to ChatGPT, getting like an initial template for a piece of documentation. So that is where I've seen a lot of it initially. It's writing pieces of content that some of it might go to the candidate. I mean, like earlier, there's been, for decades, whether manual or some form of AI, people have been trying to figure out, it's kind of like the predictive index, trying to figure out what questions, what traits, what skills. Mark Roberge wrote a book about the sales acceleration formula, where he found through looking at outcomes, the best salespeople were ones that were coachable. It wasn't years of experience, or was it? So I think people have been trying to figure out what makes a good for a while. But the real use cases right now, generative AI, what I just described, as well as people are now, when I say people, talent leaders are now used to and okay with AI actually talking to candidates. So there are very real scenarios that you're saving a ton of time by having a chat agent do intake, answer questions, screen, disposition. That is a real use case. Re-engagement. So when I say reading, looking at all the data in your ATS, that maybe it's outdated, maybe it isn't, like how do we utilize the data we already have? That's a real use case. There's a lot of AI sourcing tools to make it easier to find candidates now. Analytics, you can't change what you don't measure, and now almost everything is measurable. So those are some of the like real ways I'm seeing this. There's several other scenarios, but those are some of the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, one that we're utilizing is by taking job descriptions and pouring across the websites and career sites and being able to collect the pay ranges based on transparency, and then collect all that information and be able to cite the sources and the job description and be able to aggregate that together so we can tell people, yeah, here are the 20 companies that are hiring for this bus driver, and the pay range is between X and Y. And some of those bus drivers are working for the cities, some are working for school districts, some are working for bus companies, and blah, blah, blah. And so, there's a lot of ways artificial intelligence being used as kind of farmers across, or hunters and gatherers across the web. But your example is kind of next gen, because it goes towards actually breaking the fourth wall and actually talking and reaching out to people, and people having to go back and actually talk to an AI as if it's a person. I guess the question I wanted to ask in this is, because recruiters are going to need to buy into this, and people are too, candidates too. Do you hear people who say, I'm just not going to talk to an AI?
So certainly when we're talking to talent teams, not all of them are ready for that step. Candidates will, and I'll speak more broadly, but the data I have is from our company, but they're rating it about 4.8 out of 5. And I know a lot of our competitors get good ratings as well. And part of that is just the fact that you're like we talked about earlier with empathy, that you're getting to them right away and they're able to express more about themselves. And now, because of things like ChatGPT, like the consumers are comfortable with these chat scenarios, and they're good enough. They're good versus in the past. So yeah, candidates generally a lot, and not just us. When I talk to a lot of other CEOs at other companies that are doing things that interface with candidates, it's a way of actually increasing candidate satisfaction.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't want to crap on your product. I was just asking.
No. Yeah,
because I've been in the HR space for 35 years, and I used to know people who were in the HR organizations that I'm not using those darn computers. I'm too old. I know how to do my stuff on paper. I don't need to use a computer. Yep. Of course, they were gone in a couple of years, and then it came the 90s, and everybody was using a computer, even the people who were older. Maybe they were playing solitaire.
Yep.
But and for those of you who know who I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. But there are still people who just don't want to get on that bus.
Yeah, it was actually, I'd never heard this before, but I was presenting to a group of college students at a university a couple weeks ago, and one student said they don't want to apply to any place that isn't using AI to talk to them because they know they're going to be matched on a set of keywords and wait a long time. So I'd never heard that one before.
That's interesting.
That was the other extreme.
Well, Prem, it's possible. I mean, look, when I was hired at my second job, when I was interviewing for my second job, I went to a North American division of a European motor vehicle company, and they had one computer in the center of the room for HR. And my desk was right next to it, and they said, here's your desk, and here's the computer for the department. And I said, I've been using a computer since I was 12. Where's my computer? And they said, sir, why would you need a computer by yourself? And I said, how do you expect me to get work done? And they're like, talk to people. And then if you need the computer, you can sign up on the wall, and using the list, you can get it. So I understand that sentiment, because that sentiment is basically kind of next gen. It's kind of like the badass of I want to use this as part of what I do. And if you're not doing it, that's not a culture I want to be a part of. So anyway, I didn't go to work for that company, by the way. That was a bad sign.
Yeah, no, I think there's a conference I go to once a year, and I've presented the last 3 years. And 3 years ago, this is a TA leaders, and it was skepticism about AI. 2 years ago was like, okay, we get it. How do we use it? And now it's like, oh, here's all the cool things we're doing with it, and mainly sharing how you can use it based on others using it. So
I just want to give some people some examples, like you see on LinkedIn all the time, Prem. I'm sure I do too. I've taken some really cool, not just Gen AI courses, but courses around how artificial intelligence is impacting HR. Mm-hmm. And you should dip your toes in it if you haven't done it already. Go talk to your IT head and ask them if you have a private cloud, or, if you have a private license for whether it's ChatGPT 4.0 or some other tool. There's tons of them. I wouldn't go get one personally, because then you might be spreading stuff about your company on the web. But there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with it, and you just got to figure out how to ask. That will lead you down the road to. I don't think you'll get to where this brilliant man is, but I'm kidding. You might, but he's figured out some next gen stuff that I got to be honest with you. I'm very excited about getting. I don't want to get another job, by the way. I love my current job, but if I have to, I really want to take one of these assessments or have these conversations with the AI. So maybe we can set that up.
More than happy to. And one other thought, just for folks that are exploring different solutions, there, and you can also, I'll give my email address at the end. I'm happy to talk to
Your
folks
contact
about,
details will be in the show.
It will be.
notes,
Okay,
too.
great. But yeah, I have like a set of questions that you can ask. And I think, just one basic one is this, when we talked about risk, as you're scaling your impact, you're naturally scaling your risks. So is this vendor audited by a third party around bias is one question I'd ask. There's a series of other ones, but I think it's important because there are a lot of folks that are coming in quickly and not totally integrated into workflow or getting data from sources that might have bias. So I think if we ask the right questions, we can limit the risk piece of it. So that's not meant to be scary, but just make sure that we're being vigilant out there.
Do your homework, right?
Yep.
Do your homework.
Yep.
Prem, it was so much fun. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, David. And thanks to everyone listening.
Yes. Thank you all for listening. Take care and stay safe. Thanks for listening to the HR Data Labs podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your network. Also, check out the HR Data Labs Brown Bag Lunch every Friday on YouTube. Stay safe.